Hi, I'm Joan Middendorf from Indiana University. I'm going to be talking about using scholarship and teaching and learning theories and community to run a faculty learning community about uncovering racism today. I'm going to show some of the work of my colleague Jared Alsup, who teaches in the recreational therapy department at Indiana University. We're going to talk about how we uncovered the bottlenecks, the theories we used, our plans that we came up with, and then how we present our results. So I was very lucky at the 2019 SoTL conference in Atlanta to get to go to the session by Lee Easton and Robert Lexier, Gabrielle Lindstrom, and Michelle Yao, who have come up with the idea for disrupting interviews, which is like a new version of decoding interviews, where they're looking for places in the discipline where colonial structures are embedded and to which academics are often oblivious. So they're in Canada and they're working on complicity in Canadian colonialism towards Indigenous peoples. We might be working on some different bottlenecks here in the United States, bottlenecks of racism, ableism, heterosexism, patriarchy. It just depends on your context, but still the process they use in the article that I have in the references is very, very interesting and useful. And I did get to communicate with Lee. He was kind of guiding me as I did these interviews. He sent me a message that he included some words from Robin Atas, who he's also going to publish with. And she said that when she probes in these interviews, she probes on value-laden words. For instance, a statement like, this is just good medicine or good engineering, good biology. I would ask, what do you mean by good? And who defines what good is? And what other definitions of good might you imagine? So usually we start out this kind of work, of course, getting to know each other, and then just what is the bottleneck on these issues in your discipline? And you could stop here for a minute and write about that. But when we start working on the interviews, I do want to say a little bit about how we run the FLC. It's usually 4 meetings, eight meetings over a year, 4 meetings each semester. And in the first 4 meetings, we're working on the finding the bottlenecks and doing the 2 sessions on the interviews, and then reading our interview transcripts to see what we've come up with. So we're really clear about what we're doing before we decide what the actions we're actually going to take. So here's, I think, again, from their ideas, of course, you start with what is the bottleneck, and then you ask, how might our discipline be upholding racism with this bottleneck? And you probe and probe on that one. And then when you kind of run out of steam on that one, then you say, can you imagine an alternative? This is a very productive question. And then when you run out of steam on that one, is there a place where you feel resistant? Some people did, some people didn't, but that was also very useful. So then they would choose the critical parts, maybe a page of what they thought, where they really learned something, and where they wanted to take some action, and they wrote a summary paragraph to bring back to our meeting. And again, this is from an article Leah Shopko and I wrote about the theories we're playing with, right? So the first 4 meetings, we're just staying with the difficulties. The more I do this work, the more I realize that we want to stay with the difficulties, bottlenecks, threshold concepts. For these kinds of bottlenecks, we want to foreground, we're kind of looking at the challenge. We're just kind of looking at it from all sides, really defining it before we start going to the solutions. If it's a lesson, then we're going to use, if it's something in the classroom, we're going to use a theory of pedagogy, such as decoding the disciplines or ITCK or UDL, which help us decide what activities we're going to use to foster learning. But it might not be that kind of a solution either, not solution, but action. So, our bottlenecks seem to imply actions in these, and I wouldn't say solutions, actions, in these 3 categories. In the classroom, it could be about, you might want a lesson. You might want something, if you had a bottleneck, which somebody did on intellectual rigorism, then that means you might change something about the grading, which might be something you want to do with your department or just in your class. Or maybe there's something about who always gets to be represented, whose identities get represented in the readings and the content of the course. That might be something you want to work on, maybe bringing in speakers into your class. There could be something about the curriculum where you need to align the curriculum better for these issues, bring something out from the hidden curriculum into the explicit curriculum. And there might be something about the department at disciplinary level, something organizational. And I wasn't so sure how to work on this level. So I brought in Celine Carter for one of our sessions now that we are in the 2nd semester. And she's from the theater department at Indiana. And she has done a lot of this work. And she was able to show us something she did at each of these 3 levels. And then she went back through it again to show us where she met resistance at each of these levels. could be from students or from colleagues or from administrators, and what ideas she had for helping. And that gave us a lot of ideas. And then again, to get ideas, because people can kind of be, they kind of just be in a rut and doing things the same way. We do an activity where everybody makes suggestions for the other people on their team. We're in teams of like 3, 4, and they make 2 suggestions for the other people for how to address their bottleneck or how to assess it. And all ideas are good, and you just lay the ideas out there and everybody can see the ideas. And what this does is instead of just saying, here's what I'm going to try, you see all these great ideas out there, and then you might try, hey, look at this. This is a great idea that I suggested to somebody else, or somebody else suggested. I think I'm going to try that too. And so just making there a time and space for lots of ideas is very helpful. So I wanted to show you some of the things that people came up with. This is a lesson that Jared Alsup, who teaches in recreation therapy, did. He has 22 graduate students in his course. They're going to be working with people who have a prescription for getting some some recreational therapy for mental or physical disability or some illness. So his bottleneck was that the students don't recognize that they have bias. They can see other people have bias, but not their own. And the mental move is everybody has bias, so what are you going to do about it? And he made a great analogy that's like, hey, do you have something in your eye? I can see you have something in your eye, but then like if I have a plank in my own eye, I can't see it. And that's just human nature. So he made this practice where they had to take the Harvard bias test on disability. They had to turn in a screenshot of their results. They had to write these reflections. Can you explain your results? Because they got results that they were biased when they hadn't expected to be. And what will you do differently working with people with disabilities? So step 5, motivation. This is decoding the discipline steps. I think the assessments helped make the bias clear to the students. And I want to have Jared, and you'll see an example of how people usually report back in these faculty learning communities. He's going to show you, we'll just go to his video right now, and he can show you what he found in his project.
I have them simply go back again, and I ask them the question, do you have implicit bias against individuals with disabilities? Now, you remember in the beginning, this was 100% said no, 0% said yes. After engaging through this exercise, addressing this bottleneck, at the end, 61% said yes, I do have implicit bias against individuals with disabilities. They were finally able to understand. We had 39% that said no. And to be fair to some of these 39%, several of them, their results came back with no implicit bias. And so, according to the test results, according to their own feelings, according to their understanding, they felt they did not have any bias. The test backed that up. And so we discussed about that issue.
Okay, and I'm going to stop here for a second just to say that I've seen lots of learning data. I just want to be sure you know that you don't usually see people go from 0% to 100%. You don't expect that. These are really good results. So let's go jump to another place where he's showing some more results of his students writing their reflections.
Another student said, I was honestly quite surprised by my results and even a little offended. I've always enjoyed and been passionate about working with people with disabilities. When I first saw my test results, I thought they could not possibly be correct because of my passion for working with this population. As I think about it though, I'm realizing that enjoying my work with this population and having biases against them are not mutually exclusive. The test indicates I do hold beliefs that prefer people without disabilities. So I need to be okay with getting uncomfortable and examining these biases further so I can work towards removal.
Okay, so that's one more. I'm going to show you one more spot where he's just giving his final reflection on this project. And
identifying bottlenecks. I've mentioned I've taught this class for 4 or 5 years now, and this is the first time that I have gone through and done this process of breaking through on this bottleneck. In the past, I've just gotten frustrated with my students and said, "Why can't you see this?" And it's been a big hang up for them. And as I've tracked those students throughout their graduate program and their career afterwards, they still have a little bit of hang up on that. So I'm really grateful I was able to go through this process. And I'm hoping to see a big difference in this group, this cohort of students as they move forward. But it really has re-emphasized to me the importance of identifying bottlenecks. Second, I do not assume ideas and concepts are self-explanatory. To me, the idea of implicit bias is self-explanatory. It is implicit bias. And so I just assumed that my students would understand that. But they would see it in others, but not in themselves. They would believe implicit bias exists in everyone else, but they themselves don't have any implicit bias. So I needed to not assume that concepts that maybe to me seem self-explanatory or easy to understand, perhaps they aren't for students. Third, the importance of checking student comprehension on all essential topics and to do it daily. When I started checking student comprehension on this topic is when I realized that we had this bottleneck and this issue that was going on. This isn't a concept that I would test on in this class. I used to have this be a short 10, 15-minute discussion. I've learned now this needs to be a longer discussion and a presentation in this course. And it's through that student checking comprehension that's allowed me to understand that I need to really focus on this particular topic. And it's helped me address other topics too.
Okay, so let's go back and look. So if you want to see his full lesson or see some more other lessons, like there's one on social construction of race, you can go to the Decoding the Disciplines YouTube channel for that. So after watching his video, you could stop the video now and write a reflection on what you noticed or what you might apply. And we'll move on. I just wanted to show you a couple more of the actions we took for curriculum. I have worked with people who have, when they wanted to make their curriculum better. And I was working with we were working with somebody in the film production program, and they came up with using an alignment process that you can see in our references. They had a great set of program goals: history of cinema, managing this creative process, cinema production, but there was really nothing about all of these issues in there. So with some discussion, they realized they needed to address global and cultural awareness, at least in some of their SLOs. And one more is at the department level. This is like aimed at colleagues, really, in the speech and language science department. They realized through this process that really the hearing impaired students in their class, these are preparing graduate students to be clinicians who will work with clients who have hearing impairment. The hearing impaired students might make great clinicians, but they probably should try to figure out as people who are not hearing impaired, they might need to teach them in a better way. So they decided they would hold focus group of the hearing impaired students to see if anything needed to be improved, and bring in a guest clinician who is hearing impaired and improve their work. So usually at the end of these FLCs, I give them this set of questions to address in a presentation like Jared did. Remind us again, what was the bottleneck? What inquiry approach did you use? What did your learning data show? What was your evidence? What's the most important thing you learned? And what worked? What didn't? Okay, so that's it. Thank you so much. Our FLC used SoTL theories and the great ideas from the community so we could work on these issues that we probably could be working on more and better all the time. Go well, stay safe.